Welcome back into the Long Shot Podcast. We have an incredibly special guest with us here today, a good friend of mine, a mentor of mine, somebody who I've relied on recently in my career, but really has been a part of my career since I've been a professional. His name is Russ Rausch. Russ, thanks for joining us, man.
Hey, man. Great to be with you, Duncan, as always.
No, for sure. So Russ is the creator and founder of Vision Pursue, which is a mental performance training program that exists in app form. Also goes around and speaks with athletes, high-level entertainers, businesses, all sorts of different things. But, this is something that Davis and I have talked about for a while, having you on, just because, less about what it is that you do, but more about the person that you are and the conversations that we've had. And so many times after talking to you, I've thought, man, like this would just be so beneficial for people to hear and be a part of. And that's why, I'm excited to have you on here.
Well, man, that's great to hear. To have you say that about me makes me feel wonderful. And I'm glad you've had that. It's been that impact on you. Appreciate it, man.
No, for sure. If you don't mind, we'll just start off, talk a little bit about Vision Pursue, kind of how you got into the space. I know you have like kind of a business background, but more so what dragged you into doing mental performance training and how it's kind of grown for you over the years.
Yeah, it kind of grew out of my own misery, I guess you'd say. So I'm a small town kid from Kansas. I was the first one to go to college in my family. Just fast forward all the way to my corporate career. I'm here in Chicago in my early 40s. I'm fairly successful, especially compared to where I thought I would be. I wasn't even planning on going to college. Here I'm in Chicago. I have a nice office. I've traveled around the world. It's not like I'm rolling in money or anything, but I'm living a good life. Yeah. And yet I feel miserable. And I remember sitting in my office and thinking, what's the point of doing all this shit if I don't feel any better than this? And I started thinking, okay, well, another 5-10 years is going to pass. My career is going to advance, but what's going to change in terms of the way I'm experiencing my life? And I didn't know what to do about it, but that was the kernel of something's wrong and I need to fix it. And then over a period of years, just at some point I got into neuroscience. And what I mean by that is I read a book and then I started watching YouTube videos and I got really into how the brain's working. And what I started to understand, the way I was experiencing life had a lot more to do with what was going on in here, and vis-a-vis my automatic thoughts and my emotions, these chemicals that go through your body. That's what your life experience is, way more than what goes on outward. And so once I started getting into that, I started learning things about what was happening to me, like beating myself up and replaying things over and over again, the stuff that most of us deal with. I started realizing what was happening, why it was happening, that there was a purpose why that was going on, why my brain was doing that. And I learned how to start to be able to control that and to train my brain so my brain would operate a little differently. And so that's how I started down the path, and it became such a passion. And then I started to change myself, and I just figured, I could teach other people how to do this. And as far as I can see, almost everybody needs it as I started to talk to people about this. And so that's how it started. A passion, a hobby, a passion, and then I started a business, and then it just kind of grew from there.
For sure. I have a very distinct memory of the first time I met you. It was my rookie year, Miami Heat training camp. We were up in Boca, and Spo would bring in different speakers, and you were one of the people that he was bringing in. And it was really interesting because just prior to you coming in and speaking to us, we had somebody kind of in your same sort of space, I guess you could say. I'm not going to say who it was or whatever, but they were talking about maximizing performance. And one of the things that they were talking about was, when you're shooting free throws or you're shooting threes or you're going through practice, visualize this perfect situation, visualize, exactly the way you want to feel, visualize how the ball feels in your hands, all this sort of stuff. And, a couple hours later, you come in and you have this entirely different perspective on the exact same thing, which is optimizing performance. And yours was very much the opposite. Instead of visualize what perfect feels like, it was this shift of embrace the worst possible outcomes and understand in many ways, expect the worst possible outcomes because they're going to happen. whether you're the best in the world, whether you're a fifth grader, whatever it is, train your mind to expect that. And I remember you used the traffic example of, I don't remember exactly what it is, but basically that, or actually you tell it, the expectation of being stuck in traffic versus not, and how if you tell somebody, it's going to be 20 minutes versus it's going to be, 15, the person who ends up stuck in traffic and it takes 20 ends up being significantly more pissed off. And it's just that one shift in expectation.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you think about a lot of what happens in sports performance. It is this, and kind of in life, visualize what you want, have this picture of it happening, and you'll kind of draw it to you like the universe is going to give it to you, that sort of thing. In fact, when I first started on this path, that's kind of the path you run into because so many people are talking like that. And when you start looking at the neuroscience, you realize that that's not going to work. And then you start thinking about it logically, it doesn't even make any sense. And so it really comes down to, and to give that traffic example, because everybody can relate to that, I'm glad you brought it up. I love it. What I ask is, okay, it's a 30-minute driving experiment. You're going to drive for 30 minutes, and it's going to be bad traffic, bad drivers, a bad experience. And you take two groups of people. The first group, you tell them, this is going to be an hour and really bad. And then they do the 30-minute drive, and it's bad, and then you measure them for stress. The second group, you say this is going to be 15 minutes and easy, and then it's 30 minutes and hard, and then you measure them for stress. And I always ask the question, and the answer is a little bit surprising, but I'll ask, which group do you think experiences more stress? And I'll just ask you guys that. So what do you think? It's A or B?
The group that has the expectation that it's going to be a simple drive.
You would agree?
Yeah.
Yeah, for those of you watching on YouTube, Duncan and I are sharing a mic, so it's not that easy for us to respond at the same time. But yes, I would agree. I also, now that I have the mic, I want to take full advantage of it. I also want to point out, also from Kansas, studied neuroscience and behavior. So in some weird parallel universe, we might be the same
You're
person.
Kansas, dude?
Kansas.
Where are you from, man?
I'm from Lenexa, Kansas.
Right on.
Johnson County.
JC, my
JC.
business partner who we have to talk about, John McGraw. Awesome dude, played in the NFL for 10 years. He lives in Kansas. He's from Kansas, and he lives in Johnson County.
I love running across Kansans. There's nothing better.
Well, he's the best dude ever. You got to meet him.
I'm fascinated. Now that I have the mic, I'm just going to hijack it. I'm fascinated by some of the things that you've said because it's so relatable how you can be in this life where it seems like everything should be, you have no reason to not be happy. Yet there are times where it feels like it's impossible to get there. But using this traffic example, is there a world where you're saying you can essentially trick yourself into being happy regardless of situation?
Well, let me finish the story because it's surprising. So when I first devised that, it was all set up for everybody to answer B. I thought it was going to be easy, and it was harder, and therefore my expectations weren't met, and I got upset. I started to get surprised that like 25% of the people were picking A. And I'm like, how in the hell is anybody picking A? And then you start talking to these people and you realize, and then it actually makes sense because you think about this, just the expectation of dealing with a difficult person, for example. You think about that difficult person, you start stressing out, and then when you see him, it actually amplifies the situation. So for some people, just the thought I'm going to have a really bad drive sets off their stress response and it colors the experience. About 25% is my kind of rough estimate, after doing that question many, many times to many, many people. But either way, now to answer your question, your expectations are one of your best ways to preemptively control your stress response. And it's just an awareness that, hey, my expectations are going to trigger something in my mind. Either that I think it's so bad I make it worse than it is, catastrophizing, we've all done that. Yeah. Or the fact that I think and want everything to be easy and it's not, then makes it harder or feel more difficult than it actually is. So expectations are huge in terms of managing stress. And I don't really hear anybody talking about them. In fact, if anything, it's kind of like expect everything to be great, believe everything's going to be great.
Right. Yeah, and I just remember as a young player, I was in this unique situation trying to break into the NBA, having no kind of validity to my name. I wasn't drafted. And I was in this unique situation where Coach Spo was berating me in practice to be aggressive, to shoot, to have this to almost kind of manufacture this ego that I was in no way ready to embrace. And I kept missing all these shots over and over in preseason, missing all these shots and get opportunities in games, missing all these shots. And I remember talking it through with you, and you did a very unique thing in terms of you didn't necessarily point to like, you know what, like go out there and visualize that first one's going to go in. Instead, it was like, all right, in some way you're now kind of impervious to pain because you've already fucked up basically.
Yeah.
Is one, which is like, okay, check that box. But two, understand that like in so many ways you're kind of playing the long game with this and build the resolve to wrestle with this sort of adversity and don't have this idea that you have to be level-headed always through the chaos. Because I would have these moments where my competitiveness would boil over and I always, looked up to these athletes that were just calm, cool, collected at all times. And it was interesting for me to hear that from you that doesn't always have to be me, but instead like thank that inner drive that you have for being what it is, because that's getting you to where you need to go. Which was, I just felt like was a unique take on so much of what we hear when it comes to like performing at a high level.
Yeah, I love it, man. And so many of the times that I've been in some of the meetings you've been in where speakers come in and they say, be confident and have this confidence about you and all of that. And when you think about that, how the fuck do you do that? You either feel confident or you don't feel confident. You cannot manufacture that. You can sit there and kind of hype yourself up and get in a stance or whatever people talk about body posture. And if you're feeling like shit and you're not confident, it ain't going to work. And I remember so vividly, in fact, I wish I got rid of my phone. I have a text from you. If you remember it, you said, I just came out. It was after the game. You said, after halftime, I missed every single warm-up shot. And that's never happened to me in my life before. But you knew, like, it didn't matter. It doesn't, you put so much emotion and stock in, am I making shots and how am I feeling? And kind of my big thing is it doesn't matter how you feel. You can make shots or you can do whatever you're doing. You can make speeches. You can do whatever it is that you do no matter how you feel. And then you have this real confidence and you're not in your own mind of trying to feel a certain way. Instead, you're realizing, fuck, I can do this no matter how I feel. And I think that's kind of a lot of what we talked about. And then also just saying, like, I'm sure people will tell you, hey, a 3's a 3, no matter where you're at, you can do it. So no, a 3's not a 3. If it's preseason, you're trying to make an NBA team or your first NBA game or all that, it's going to feel different and it's supposed to feel different, but it doesn't matter how it feels. So I don't know if you remember all that, but that's kind of how I think about it with you and really with a lot of players that I'm working with and business executives for that matter.
No, I do remember it because for me, it was an interesting process because actually both of us are classic overthinkers, right? And as a result, I've gotten so routine oriented and driven, and some of it's out of I just like to have a routine, but the other part of it is born out of I need everything to be exactly the way it is so that I can perform to a high level. And I haven't done away with that because I still very much have a routine, and part of it is I like having the rhythm of it, but I have done away with this idea that like, I have to make a shot from here, here, and here before I play a game. Like the kind of like superstitious stuff, because you pointed to exactly that. It's like I've had games where I've gone out and missed every single shot in warm-ups and then played great. And I've had games where I've gone out and made every single shot in warm-ups and then the game starts and I can't make a shot. So it's like at a certain point, you're basically throwing out like, okay, a warm-up is what it is, but it really doesn't matter. And it certainly doesn't dictate performance the way that we all in our minds think that it does. And the moment that we start to get hung up on, okay, I shot it well in warm-ups or I didn't shoot it well in warm-ups. Now you're, maybe stressing over, am I not going to play well, this, that, or whatever. You're just adding all these different aspects to a game where instead of we really should be working to simplify. And one thing that I've learned over time is that like shooting, like ball handling, these are skills that you can actually grow and develop, which is a lot of what your app is about, a lot of what you preach in when you go and speak to these different people.
Yeah, there's so much in expectations. And one of the things I remember having this conversation with you was, how many shots, if you shoot 10 threes in a game, how many do you have to make to feel good about it? And when I ask 3-point shooters that question, the number ends up being, now they think about it analytically and they might come up with 4 because everybody knows 40% is good. But I go, no, fuck that. Like, what makes you feel good? You're going to feel good that you missed 6, especially if you got 10 pretty good looks. And I think the answer always ends up being about 6. It's hard to scoff. I remember you saying this. It's hard to scoff if I make 6. And so that's another thing about the brain, is where 4 is excellence. In a particular game, it may not feel that way at all, depending on the looks you get and all of that. So you have to realize your brain always wants you to be up a notch from even excellence, maybe the greatest ever. And instead of thinking that's a bad thing, you realize that's a good thing. I have an inner dog that wants to make 6. So you thank that inner dog, but you can also bring it back and go, hey, but there's days I'm going to make 3. There's days I'm going to make 2. There's days I'm going to make 1. Sometimes I'm going to make 6 or 7. So in the long run, you realize that over time, if I have the ability, and some people don't, right? You can't be delusional. I'm going to end up where I need to be, as long as I don't get all twisted up on every game, every situation, and I just roll with however I'm feeling and know I can make shots no matter how. And just one other thing I'll say, because I've asked every group of athletes I've ever been around this question, and you alluded to it. Have you ever rolled into a game feeling totally confident, totally in the zone, and then you sucked?
Yes.
Every hand goes up. Yeah. Have you ever rolled in feeling like shit and you're completely out of sorts and you rocked it? Every hand goes up. And I could go vice versa too.
Right. Yeah.
And so that speaks to what you're talking about. And so much of that is different than what a lot of people out there are saying.
Yeah, I think the 10 threes example, obviously, given my profession and the way that I play, particularly hit home for me in a unique way, because it also it helped me paint a picture of how fickle statistics are in the short term and on an individual game-to-game basis, where it's like, I go 3 of 10 and I'm terrible. And maybe 2 of those shots felt so pure and they were perfect reps that hit back rim, in and out, whatever. Okay, now all of a sudden 2 of those go in. I'm 5 of 10 and that's 50% from 3 on high volume. Even if one of the 2 goes in, that's 40% from 3 on high volume. That is damn good. And it's just like, I found myself getting caught up in whether or not that one little rep, I'm gonna base the entirety of what's going on in my mind based on whether or not that one rep goes in or out. And it's just, it does exactly that. It throws you off course for future successes. And one thing and people ask me all the time now, and I basically just steal your stuff about, I'm going through a slump. What is it? How do I get out of this? And it's like, you basically have to build the resolve and the trust that game to game, throw it out. People have bad shooting games all the time. Steph Curry's gone 0 for 11, 1 for 13. It happens all the time. I've had plenty of bad shooting games. That's for damn sure. But what it is you have to build the resolve that over a big enough sample size, whether it's 5 games, 10 games, 15 games, if you're getting consistent reps, you're going to be right around that 40% mark. And that's ultimately what I hold myself to. But at the same time, I'm not going to be satisfied at that 40%, knowing that what I know, that one that went in and out, I'm going to want that to go in, and I'm going to expect that one to go in. Or the one that was considered a tough shot, the same way, I'm going to want and expect that to go in. So instead of getting hung up on individual reps, it's more about just building that resolve. And like I just said, I think that alone, dealing with adversity in that way, is a skill. It really is. And one that you've helped me kind of navigate, for sure.
Yeah, great. Well, thank you. And I think when it comes to people who are just living life, that aren't playing sports, but that's the reason why I love working in sports, even though most of my business is corporate, because, corporate people, you don't see them fucking up or trying to perform. It's not in front of a bunch of people. It's just, there's something about sports where the competition is so insanely cutthroat. Everybody's watching. It's so difficult. You just can't really mimic that in life and in business. But the same things are going on just with people who aren't in sports, who are just trying to perform at a high level. They'd like to do better than they're doing. They're going to mess up. And so there's this powerful thing about knowing it's not going to be perfect and you're going to mess up, but also not being delusional, because you can shoot 40%. Some people can't. And so there's some fine line there between delusion and realistic expectations. But yeah, I think you described it well.
How do you find that balance in your personal life? Like, do you find that it's easier to give the advice than actually check in with yourself and make sure that it's, you're holding yourself to those standards?
No, I don't find it easier. The way I describe it is like this. I had a maniac brain for sure. And that's how I got into this, to sort of try to help myself. So hard on myself, beating myself up. And for me, at the time I got into this, I was doing sales type stuff. So you'd have a sales meeting and presentations, and you're dealing with kind of asshole customers. And so you can always look back at that. I didn't do that right, and beating yourself up, woulda, shoulda, coulda type stuff. And what happens when you train your brain the right way, your brain starts to become reflexively handling all this better. And you've probably noticed that yourself, where you don't have to coach yourself through all this stuff that we talked about. The way I describe it in terms of self-criticism is now it's just a bunch of information constantly coming to me. I look back at the stuff like a speech or a presentation I did a year ago, and it's kind of cringy to me today. And I know that a year from now, I might look back at this and it might be cringy to me. And so I realize I'm in this constant state of improvement, and I'm constantly getting feedback about what I did well and didn't do well, but it's not a personal indictment. It doesn't feel that. It's not a huge chemical reaction. It just starts to become information. And so it's pretty easy for me to keep on this plane of improving and realizing I'm not there yet. And you're never going to be there. I mean, look at Spo. I mean, Spo's been doing this so many years at a high level. And any other great coach I know, and they're not going, oh, I've completely arrived now. I mean, we're grinding it out constantly. And when your brain really gets on board, you keep getting that feedback, but it's not fucking with you like that. You're not feeling like you totally suck, but you realize you're constantly trying to get better.
How do you, because I definitely relate to this idea of seeking out constant self-improvement. What is a way to, because at the same time it's a fleeting feeling at the same time, right? Because you're going after something that's infinite, which is always keeps you on the hunt, but at the same time there is a lack of maybe satisfaction or an ability to like kind of take a breath and have some perspective and pat yourself on the back. So how do you advise to walk that line in between always wanting more for yourself while also having a certain level of content and understanding like, oh, wow, look how far I've come, or look at the improvements that I've made?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this really kind of gets to the very foundation of, where I like to get people. And it reminds me a little bit of your journey. I remember being here in Chicago, having that walk. It's the end of the year. You got a contract coming up, big contract for you. You're struggling a little bit and you're feeling that. And if you remember what we talked about, I remember just saying to you, listen, man, you can't fuck this up. And I didn't mean it like, be careful and don't fuck it up. Like, it's impossible for you to fuck this up at this point. And what I'm trying to say by that is we all think that getting to wherever that is the be all end all. And that's why there's so much stress and anxiety about it. In fact, a lot of people think if they don't have that stress and anxiety, they're not going to be able to do the shit they have to do to get there because it's so hard. And what I believe is that's not true. I believe when you get your mind right, you can walk that path towards trying to get wherever you want to go and be happy at the same time, because what you're ultimately doing is surrendering that outcome. And what I mean by that is when you get to the realization where we started this whole conversation at, I don't need that thing to be happy. I can be happy without that thing. And so if that's the case, then my happiness is right now. And I'm not saying everything's easy and you're happy all the time. There's struggle and everything else. But what I'm saying is, if this improvement that we're striving for isn't the answer to my happiness and fulfillment, I already have that, then that takes the pressure off that. Now I'm doing it not because I have to, because I want to. So that's where I'm at in my life. I mean, I'm trying to grow my business. I'm trying to improve. I'm trying to be a better father. I'm trying to be a better everything. And there's kind of two things are true at the same time, which is I don't need to do anything to get any better or anything else, to be happy and fulfilled. I can do that without doing anything. And on the other hand, I just want to.
Yeah.
Both of those things are true, and that's hard for people to understand. But that, to me, is a neuroscience thing. When you get your brain balanced, that becomes the way you experience the world.
Yeah, it's counterproductive to the society that we live in that is constantly measuring people based on their accolades and this promotion or this opportunity, whatever. What are some, like, and you don't, I mean, you can, I would love for you to get into the nitty gritty of it, but like, what are some examples of stuff that everyday people, athlete, whatever it is, that you would tell somebody that is struggling, whether they feel like they're caught up in the rat race of it and lack a certain sort of purpose or happiness in their day-to-day?
You know, one of the things I do, and I was kind of slow to do this at first because I wasn't sure how it was going to go over, but I have this video. It starts out with Adam Silver, the commissioner of the NBA. I think you've seen this video.
Yeah.
He's getting interviewed, and he's basically saying all the NBA players I talk to are very unhappy. And it goes on, Lady Gaga saying she's very unhappy. J. Cole saying, I did all this stuff and I'm unhappy. Russell Brand, it goes on and on and on. And so I play this video and it kind of blows people away. And the other kind of cool scene, it has Aaron Rodgers winning his first Super Bowl. And that night, after he won the Super Bowl, it's funny watching the Rams win the Super Bowl and everybody say, this is the greatest thing in my life and everything like that. He said that night, what kept going through his mind was, I hope this isn't all there is. And it kind of blows people's mind because they look at people like you and they think, well, okay, they got to be the happiest people in the world. They're literally living their dream. They're helping other people, which I'm sure you're doing with some of the resources you have. You have great relationships, and some of the relationships you have are amazing. You're always in pursuit of more goals. I mean, we're going down the checklist of everything we're told will make you happy. And so that really helps people to realize it isn't out there. It's in here. So that's the starting point. And then number two, then you teach them, okay, why are you unhappy? It's because of your thought patterns, and your thought patterns are usually what went wrong and what could go wrong and how I'm not good enough. And it's all really self-absorbed. Think about how narcissistic our thinking is. If we don't get our lunch the way we ordered it, we're pissed off, even though maybe, hundreds of people, thousands of people are dying in Europe right now. And it's nothing's ever good enough. Now that sounds bad, and that's why people say the ego is bad, but that's good. That's the left hemisphere of your brain. You have to have that, because if you're not learning from the past or planning for the future, if you don't care about yourself or your team or your family, and you're concerned about everybody else in the world, how are you going to get anything done? If you think everything's great all the time, how are you ever going to improve? And so you have to make friends with that part of your brain. And then you also have to connect to another part of your brain that has a very different perspective, the right hemisphere, where it's not about the past and the future. It's about right here, right now. That's how it operates. It's not about me. It's about we, or something bigger than any of us. And everything's great as it is. And so that's a beautiful place to be, and that's what the right hemisphere experience is. And so it's a matter of balancing those two, because one's not better than the other. You don't prefer one over the other. They're both there, and you need them both.
Hey Dave, I'm back to talk some more about athletic greens. And let me tell you, I'm going to say it again, athletic greens is the real deal. I started taking athletic greens because I wanted to take a multivitamin. I was taking a multivitamin, the fish oils, all that sort of stuff, vitamin D, but it was just hard to develop a routine of taking them every single morning. And I also don't drink coffee in the morning. It's not really something that I do. So I felt like athletic greens was the perfect alternative because it was going to give me energy in the morning, which it does, and it checks the boxes for all my multivitamins and all my greens for the day. I still eat some greens on top of it, but everything on top of it is just supplemental at this point. It's unbelievable for your gut health, your energy. There's no nasty chemicals or artificial anything, and it actually tastes really good. I've gotten to really, really like the taste. It helps your sleep quality, your recovery time, mental clarity, mental health, everything. It's just a prime example of eat good, feel good. And I'm just a huge fan of Athletic Greens.
I was already a massive fan, but I've started to put it in an Athletic Greens water bottle that I now have. And so I'm shaking up the water and the scoop of AG1 in that water bottle. And it's definitely elevated the experience. It was already enjoyable, but now I'm just all the way in, and it's just great stuff.
So right now, it's time to reclaim your health, and we are here to help you do so. You have an opportunity to arm your immune system with convenient daily nutrition, especially heading into flu and cold season. It's just one scoop in a cup of water every day. That's it. It's simple. No need for a million different pills and supplements to look out for your health. To make it easy, Athletic Greens is going to give you a free 1-year supply of immune-supporting vitamin D and 5 free travel packs with your first purchase. All you have to do is visit athleticgreens.com/longshot. Again, that is athleticgreens.com/longshot to take ownership over your health and pick up the ultimate daily nutritional insurance. I remember you and I, one thing that was totally unique, we hopped on a Zoom and we analyzed photographs and pictures. And there were these elaborate pictures of landscapes. And to be honest with you, you don't even know exactly what you're doing or what you're looking at. And the direction is basically just to observe and to be very diligent about what it is you're looking at and, take into account every aspect of the photo. And it's exactly that. And actually, Dave, as you kind of like said it, in a way, it felt like I was basically just tricking myself to activate a part of my brain that was being neglected. And in this moment of being caught up in all these, the rat races of and mind you, I live an incredible life, and I don't say for a second that I don't, but it is relative in the same way, the NBA season is a grind in its own unique way, and the challenges that come with it. And I feel like I have this propensity to get caught, everybody does, on this kind of default setting of just kind of navigating the world throughout it. And just a moment to like kind of take a pause and look at those photos caused my mind and my brain to think in a way that was just different and challenged me in just a little bit of a different way, and almost created a refreshed perspective that I felt, truly.
Yeah, the neuroscientist who led the way on all this is Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor. She has a very famous TED Talk. And what was cool about her experience, she's a neuroscientist at Harvard. She loses her left hemisphere. She has a blood clot. It shuts down. It takes 7 years to recover. And she only has the right hemisphere. So this unique situation of a neuroanatomist be able to experience that. And then she heals, the left heel. So what she talks about is what I just described, the left versus the right and the way they perceive the world, the difference, and she lived it for 7 years. And so when I have you and others look at pictures, I love doing this exercise because if I went through it with you or anyone else or even myself, you're all twisted up about something, whatever it is that's keeping you up at night. And then I'll have people, okay, write down what you think about this, what you think you need to do about it, how heavy does it feel. Then they do it. Then we look at these pictures, and what the pictures is doing, it's activating your right hemisphere because the right hemisphere thinks in pictures. So I'll have them look at pictures, I'll ask them questions, things will surface, and then I'll go, okay, how do you feel about it now? And write down what you should do about it now. And they'll get a totally different answer. And that's kind of mind-blowing for people because I'm not telling you something like, oh, well, it'll pass and you'll be okay. And I'm not telling you any of that shit. You just experienced it in your own mind. And this is really crucial when it comes to this whole thing of enjoying your life. You have to be able to access that right hemisphere. But you also want that, it's tricky because you want that left hemisphere. That's your best friend. That's why you're doing what you're doing in sports. That left hemisphere, that dog, you want to keep that dog, but you also just want to balance it out.
Hearing you talk about this stuff it's taken me back to my undergrad experience studying neuroscience. And some of it, honestly, I don't know how to phrase this without sounding just cynical, but some of it is scary. It's almost like it waters down the experience to just, really, it's just our brains experiencing this balance of chemicals. And it's just finding a way to make sure that we're doing it in a way that's going to make us happy. Does that make sense? Like, I remember thinking that in my studies sometimes of like, really, we're really just perceiving this world and these stimuli. And it's, again, I said this earlier, but it's almost like it's just finding a way to trick your brain. Maybe trick is the wrong word, but do it in a way that is going to make you happy.
Yes. I would say it, it is kind of weird when you kind of think, it really comes down to what's reality. Because your left brain has a totally different perception of reality than your right hemisphere. And when you think about the human brain or humans in general, we're only capable of knowing, we only know what we know. We can only perceive what we can perceive. Think about a dog, for example. Like, try to teach a dog algebra. You can't do it. They're incapable of perceiving it. So the problem is we don't know what we're incapable of perceiving. Everybody thinks they can perceive everything, but we're all limited. It is kind of crazy when you get into it and realize that I'm sort of a puppet on a string based on the automatic processes of my brain. I'm choosing a tiny portion of my thoughts. I'm choosing none of my emotions. Those are all happening automatically. And sort of to answer your question, to me, it's not like manipulating or gaming your brain or whatever. To me, it's always about learning how your brain was designed to work, understanding why it's doing what it's doing, and then being kind of the captain of my own destiny in terms of my brain. That's why I have a prefrontal cortex, executive functioning, so we can realize, oh, there is a limbic brain that's projecting a neurotransmitter to make me feel anxious. There is a left hemisphere that's making me think about, oh, what the hell is going to happen with this pandemic or whatever else is going on in the world. And I can perceive all that, see it for what it is, and then also connect to a right brain that might say, oh, it's all going to be fine. And so when you understand all of this was put together for a reason by whoever or whatever put it together, and you understand how to work it, then you start to be happy and fulfilled, but also not like the village idiot. You can still be productive and move through and deal with all the shit that we have to deal with.
That's a more positive way to frame it. Thank you for forming it. Because you're right. Really, it's the thinking that, which I believe is true, and it goes to everything you're saying, is that we can sort of consciously make the decision to perceive these things in a positive way. And we were talking a little bit about this off camera before we started, but it takes me to what you were saying before we sat down, which is this question of whether we are happy by default and things stray us away from that, or if it's the opposite and we're looking for ways to find happiness. And maybe I'm framing that the wrong way.
I think you framed it exactly the right way. And kind of the way my mind works and how I ended up sitting here today and going through everything I I've been doing the last few years with Duncan and everybody else, has been my lens of, okay, we're here. Are we supposed to be happy and fulfilled? Or are we supposed to be unhappy and unfulfilled? And even the concept of, okay, why do I want to eat ice cream more than I want to eat broccoli? If broccoli is better. Like, what? It seems like everything's fucked up. Like we're all unhappy and unfulfilled and unhealthy, fighting all these urges, always running upstream, right? Always running uphill against the wind, no matter how successful we are. Why is that? And I've always believed that can't be the way it's supposed to be. That cannot be the way, that's not why we're here. And so this has kind of led me down the path of, okay, why is this happening? And the conclusion I've come to is we don't understand what our brain's doing and why. And we don't know how to operate our bodies the right way. And we can talk about some of that too. And when you do all of that, then your natural state then becomes happy and fulfilled the way we're designed to be. Not that it's perfect, not that you're the village idiot. I mean, you're going through problems and stresses and everything else. But gravity becomes happiness and fulfillment and health. And then you stray from it and you lose your way, or you go through something tough and then you come back, versus I'm spending my whole life working my ass off to try to be happy, fulfilled, and healthy. And you look at success literature, it's all built on the premise that we're going to be unhappy, so I have to succeed. I have to find something I love. I have to find great relationships. I have to help people. This whole laundry list of shit that you have to do to be happy. And then when you're happy, then you even get there, and then you have to keep doing again. Then the thing becomes, well, because you always got to be pursuing new things. So everything is kind of built on the premise of everything's messed up and we have to constantly fight to be better. And I think that's not true. I think it's the opposite. But you have to start looking at the world differently and thinking differently and really understand, in my opinion, what's going on.
I just stole the mic from Duncan again. I have so many friends, and I felt this way too. Coming out of college, you get your first job, it's all exciting, and then a couple years in, you go down this laundry list of, well, I've got friends and family that I love. I'm in this apartment or home that I love. I've got a dog that I love. I've got a boyfriend or girlfriend that I love. But my job sucks. My job sucks, and it's ruining my life. I'm not happy. And so they switch jobs. And now they're at this job that they love, and it's new and it's exciting, but you're still not happy. And there's this moment of realization, and I felt this, just speaking personally. I was at a job where I was fine, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to do. And now I'm doing this podcast with one of my best friends, and it's like, okay, now I'm living the dream. Now there's no reason for me to not be happy. Yet you still have days where you wake up and you're not happy. And you start to question, like, wait, what is wrong with me? And it's that moment of realization, and you've talked about this already. You spoke to this earlier, but, oh, wait, it's all right here. It's all internal. You can't reach for happiness. You can't find enough external stimuli to make you happy. It's all going on in between your ears.
Yes. And this constant search for it. I mean, watch Behind the Music or any of these shows where they take successful people and they follow their career. We already know what's going to happen. They're gonna put this tunnel vision on making their dreams come true. It's all about making their dreams come true, and then they're gonna sort of almost destroy themselves, and they're gonna figure out it wasn't about that, and then they figured, it's actually about relationships, and I found the perfect woman. When that doesn't work out, and so we're in this constant state of trying to find it out here versus finding it in here. And then I like to talk about bringing it externally. I'm happy and fulfilled inside. Now I can bring it to my job. Let's talk about achievement. Because it isn't about, because I do believe it's true. It's not what you do. It's in here, and then you'll be happy no matter what you do. But then you can achieve by bringing that happiness, that fulfillment, that energy, that passion into what you do. And you can't help but succeed to the talent level that you have. I mean, no matter how hard I might try or whatever, I was never going to play in the NBA no matter what, or any professional sport for that matter.
Don't count yourself out.
So I hope that makes some sense. So I'm not saying, hey, it doesn't matter what you do at all, but in some sense, and maybe in the most important sense, it doesn't. But that doesn't mean that you can't go out and be really great at something that you love to do. Just see it for what it is. It's what you're doing. It's not the be-all, end-all.
Dave, I'm pretty excited that this podcast is now sponsored by BetterHelp. Is there something interfering with your happiness or maybe preventing you from achieving your goals? BetterHelp will assess your needs and match you with your own licensed professional therapist. You'll be matched with a therapist in under 48 hours. It's not a crisis line. It's not a self-help. It's professional therapy done securely online.
There's a broad range of expertise available, which may not be locally available in many areas. You can log into your account anytime, send a message to your therapist anytime, get timely and thoughtful responses. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions, Dunk, so you won't ever have to sit in an uncomfortable waiting room. Nobody wants to do that. BetterHelp is committed to facilitating great therapeutic matches, so they make it easy and free to change therapists if needed. It's more affordable than traditional offline therapy, and financial aid is available.
Affordable and convenient. How much better could it get? BetterHelp wants you to start living a happier life today. Visit their website and read their testimonials that are posted daily. Like this one, quote, I feel less stressed, anxious, and depressed. It's really a great option for anyone looking for affordable help, end quote. Visit betterhelp.com/LS. That's better, HELP, and join over the 2 million people who have taken charge of their mental health with help of an experienced professional. In fact, so many people have been using BetterHelp that they are recruiting additional therapists in all 50 states. Special offer for Longshot fans. Get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/LS. Better your life today. You referenced a little bit, just briefly, about optimizing your body, and it's something that you and I have texted back and forth about recently. Kind of like a new development, I guess, that you've kind of caught on to, which is maximizing your body, which I think then in terms helps you maximize what's going on in your brain, and kind of tapping into circadian rhythm and all those sorts of things. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I think it's super interesting, and I think it could be helpful to people too as well.
Yeah, well, great, man. Yeah, I'm super passionate about that right now. So, in my quest of trying to help myself and other people to sort of have this baseline of happiness, fulfillment, and health, there was one piece of that puzzle that was always missing with Old Vision Pursue, what we typically train people on. And the pandemic really brought that to light. So when the pandemic hit in, I guess it was 2020, I held up really well emotionally through all of that, through kind of the isolation and the revenue hit and what's going to happen to my job and, all the shit that we all went through. Emotionally, yeah, I felt that, but I didn't feel it like a lot of people did. And so VP really held up through all of that. Where I started seeing some cracks for me was now all of a sudden I'm eating more than I used to. I'm drinking more than I used to. In fact, I have to drink a beer or two or a glass of wine or two every single day. And I guess some people do that all the time, but I've never done that my whole life. Now I'm gaining weight. Now I'm not working as hard. I'm becoming slothful. I'm watching Netflix all the time. I know a lot of people can relate to that. I know Duncan can't, but
I can relate to Netflix. That's for damn sure.
So this is happening to me. And I think this really speaks to what's going on in the world. So what do I want to do? Well, it's very simple. I want to start eating better. I want to get more energy. I want to lose a little weight. So if that's what I want to do, what's the recipe? What would you guys say? What would people tell me if I said, hey, you know what? I want to lose a little weight. I want to have a little more energy. I want to feel better.
Diet and exercise.
Diet and exercise, right? And so that's what I try to do, right? So I thought, for about 6-7 months, I'm going to start working out again. I'm going to start eating right. I'm going to quit drinking that beer. And so I try to go up that mountain, which isn't a very big mountain, by the way. It's a pretty small mountain.
It's a hard mountain, though. It's a challenging mountain. And
I fail, and I'm sitting there going, what the fuck? I'm not trying to win the Boston Marathon. I'm not trying to kick my heroin addiction. I just want to move a little more, eat a little better. And it really got me going down like something's not right here. And so whenever I discover something's wrong, I really start looking into the science. So it took me a while, but what I found was, and you mentioned it, was circadian rhythm. And here's what I found. Dr. Sachin Panda, who's at the Salk Institute in San Diego, he's a neuroscientist, has done this work on circadian rhythm, and it's really incredible. But the bottom line is, think about it like this. Most people have heard of circadian rhythm, and they think of it as the day-night cycle. Your brain and body want to do certain things during the day and night. And the simple thing is I want to be awake and do shit during the day, and I want to sleep and recover at night. Well, it's way deeper than that. So what happens is you have a cluster of neurons in your hypothalamus. It's called the suprachiasmatic nucleus. Whatever that.
Love that.
For whatever that's
Good
worth.
stuff.
But here's what's important about it. It sets the clock in your every cell in your body. And I think of it like this. The cells in your body are little workers that want to make your body, they want to optimize your body. They want to detoxify you. They want to fight off disease, for immunity and that sort of thing. They want to digest your food and optimize your energy and your nutrition. They want to do all these amazing things. But they can't do them unless you allow this circadian rhythm to work. There are no alternatives to it. In other words, you can't diet and exercise your way out of this. So there are there are many things you can do for circadian rhythm, but I think there are 3 that really make the difference, and we're teaching people about them. One is getting morning light. Because what happens is the way these cluster of neurons get activated is through light. Light comes in through the eyes. It releases a neurochemical, or actually a hormone or some sort of chemical that starts the clock. And then proteins are released through every cell of the body, which synchronizes all those clocks. This is only going to happen if you get the right amount of light. And the best way to get that is sunlight. So getting light in the morning is one of the most important things you can do for your health. How many people know that?
Yeah, I love that. I actually, your boy Huberman, I was recently listening to a podcast, and he was talking about the importance of early morning, just 15 minutes of sunlight. And he actually, I probably should have put together that he was relating it to circadian rhythm, but just the importance of what that can do to the balance of your body. And actually, I think he made the point of being jet lagged is an example of your circadian rhythm being completely out of sorts, and that feeling of being groggy, lethargic, is exactly that. It's that your basic internal clock has no idea what's going on, and seeing that light in the morning is what kind of stabilizes, it sounds like.
Starts the whole system up.
Yeah.
You know, the system, these workers can't do their job if you don't, they're like shift workers. They want to start and stop on shifts, and they need enough time to do their work.
Love that.
And morning light is like number one. That's the first thing. And think about how simple that is to do.
Super, yeah. And that doesn't matter. I mean, obviously it's easier for me being in sunny South Florida. Is that just any sort of, like, what if you're in Chicago? What if you're in the Northeast? Is it still morning light? Is that still going to be enough?
Yeah. The photons are out there. There's plenty of photons out there even on a cloudy day that are going to start that up. So
that's good to know. All right.
All right. But you do need to be outside without sunglasses.
Got it.
But you can be in the shade.
Got you.
So that's one. Two, and a lot of people have heard about this, intermittent fasting or time-restricted eating. Now, when I heard about that, in fact, it was funny because I was traveling with the Heat maybe 4 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, and I was with a few of the coaches, and we were all kind of talking shit about intermittent fasting, like it was some kind of stupid fad. Well, it turns out it's not a fad. Maybe it is a fad, but there's really hard science behind it. But the bottom line is at least 12 hours of contiguous not eating or fasting, which means 12 hours when you can eat and 12 hours when you can't, allows these cells in their body to really do all this work, to detoxify, to repair, and do all that. And if you don't give them time to do it, they simply won't do it. So that's the second window, is keep all your eating in a 12-hour period. You can go down to even 6, but I don't do that. I do 10. I eat within 10, and then that gives me 14 where I'm fasting.
Got you. So a 10 to 14 relationship. That's good to know.
Or it could be 12 to 12.
Could be 12 to 12. All right.
I'd consider that a minimum.
So that basically discounts all late night eating, is probably, which I feel like is kind of documented as being pretty bad for you, regardless of what it is that you're eating, which makes sense.
Late night's okay as long as
you're taking your time in the morning. All right. So that's 2. What's the third?
Third then is an 8-hour sleep window. Doesn't mean you're sleeping for 8 hours. It just means you go to bed and get up at 8 hours and you're in the right environment. What I mean by that is it's dark and cold.
Yeah.
So those are the 3 windows. And if you do those 3 windows, not perfectly, but if you start to pay attention to that and do that, all of a sudden, these cracks in my armor that I was noticing, all of a sudden your energy goes up. Your urges to eat and drink start to radically change. Your urge is actually then to go out and move, not to sit around. And so it starts to change everything because your body's getting what it needs. And that was kind of the missing piece to the puzzle. You can understand your left brain, your right brain, your limbic brain, kind of VP 1.0 stuff that we've always talked about. But you're still missing a real important piece if you're not paying attention to your circadian rhythm.
Where does exercise fall into this? Because just speaking for myself, I definitely feel better about myself, and maybe this says more about me than the human body, when I have gotten a sweat in or when I've gotten a workout in. It just seems as if my day is undoubtedly more positive afterwards.
So exercise, clearly good for you. I just say it's not a substitute for circadian rhythm, and it's not a substitute for understanding your left and right brain and your limbic brain. So I think if you get that stuff right, you don't need to exercise to have good mood, good health, kind of happy, fulfilled, and healthy. However, the good news is when you get your circadian rhythm right, exercise becomes something you have an urge to do versus something you're making yourself do. So it becomes very easy then to get out and move, whether you want to be hardcore in amazing shape or you just want to get outside and move around for an hour a day. It just will start happening naturally.
I love that. That's good stuff. Well, Russ, thank you so much for joining us, man. As always, I always learn a whole lot whenever we get together. So thank you for coming on. And I think a lot of people will take a lot from everything you've shared. So I appreciate it.
Man, it's good being with both of you, and thanks for having me.